What is going on, everybody? I'm BobbyFi back here with my man Eric Sheets Haber. We are going to be going through this awesome NFL slate. I really like this slate coming up on Sunday, and we are going to talk a little bit about sort of general strategy, also like general football strategy, how it differs from some of the other sports. All that. I'm going to introduce Eric and let him get talking. But first, real quick, I just wanted to sort of say as an overall strategy, I've won where I've scripted. I've run in football where I haven't. I always like to write a script for football more than any sport because you have time and adjust it and try and really get your plays as close to what you really want of each player. And then also don't spread out too far. I've also won when I've just put in a few lineups and happened to, hit a 6K score with literally like a few $100. It's a game where you can really win by being different if you get the right stuff. But for the most part, you want to play a little bit more chalky than you do, say, baseball. Basketball, you want to be a little more chalky in basketball than you do football. And for me, I've always had success on just two things. One, betting on the stars who everybody sort of is overlooking that week and forgetting or too focused on how difficult the matchup is and someone else standing out too much more. And then it's getting the extreme weird values right. And I like this slate early on because as of right now, there aren't these screaming obvious values, and it's going to make you have to play real DFS. And it's kind of frustrating that we don't get that enough of the year. But this is a slate where, and again, something's going to happen and somebody's going to become chalky, and it'll probably be pretty good. But I like the guys I'm at right now on this slate. There's 3.5 games that I feel like I'm really targeting, and that's pretty good because I can condense that, and really it's mostly 2 of those games. So anyway, Sheets, I'm going to let you take it away. You've obviously had some success. We've done this together before. Tell the people a little bit about your sort of general strategy, and then we'll jump into game by game for the slate.
Okay, so for NFL, again, for those of you who watch my approach to NBA and whatever, NFL is different a little bit because the projections, which is what I base my initial looks on, are just carry just a lot more variance than that of basketball. And that's partially because of the way results distribute, the way the points distribute, the way you get 6 points for 1 touchdown, you know what I mean? And so that the NFL is a little different as far as the way I look at it. I'm not as tied to the projections as I am as to some other sports. In the few years I've been playing NFL, every year I have had, till this one, I've had a top 10 finish in the million, right? And I'm really looking for that this year. And this year, it just hasn't quite gotten there for me.
On your volume, that's an impressive feat in itself.
I guess so.
I mean, this is not a guy who's max entering everything, people.
That's true. But this year, it's a struggle. And I think my approach is sound, and it always is. I'd like to pick a couple of games to focus on and make sure that they're not too chalky. And then what I use is I diversify my one-offs and I diversify around them. Where I find that I struggle is when I play too many games, when I play too many different stacks of too many different quarterbacks, because what happens is that you really need to get every piece right to win the types of tournaments I want to win. So, it's to just get the nuts is almost impossible. So you want to give yourself enough options around your core, around your games that you can differentiate. And so if your game hits, you have a couple of chances to get there. So in this particular slate, again, I'm going to start with projections, but if projections aren't close, I'm probably not going to play the game. But there are a couple of games that I'm going to focus on, and hopefully between the projections and my own takes on game strips, and talking to people, I can find some good plays and some good approaches. I usually play about 20 lineups, which again for the NFL is not a lot. But every once in a while when I do try to script, I'll throw it on FanDuel, like a whole bunch of lineups or something like that. I've never really had a lot of success doing that, honestly. I find that I min cash a lot and I have whatever. I have a decent ROI, but I find myself not really getting the real big sweat. So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, well, I'm impressed by your ability. Like it's nice because I've talked to a lot of people and I've taught a lot of people, and it's always nice to talk to someone who you really feel like you can get along on the same level with when it comes. And at least even if we don't agree on certain DFS plays, there is a very similar way we look at things, which is really nice. All right, let's get into to the game by game.
All right,
I'm really excited.
So so the first game I'm going to look at, and again, I have much less I don't want to say tolerance. Let's say I have much less imagination than Bobby does with some plays. Let's put it that way. So I think
for better or worse, in all fairness, for better or worse.
So for better or for worse, exactly. So we'll see how this plays out. So for example, the Buffalo Denver game. Now again, I was one of the people. I had some good Buffalo stacks last week. I was pretty. I would say close because I wasn't really close, but the Buffalo
we were close. You know how we were close? We did it. That Buffalo stack combo was owned by no one, and I cannot believe it. And I had 30 odd % of it between the sites, and to have a barely profitable week where that happens, where you have the top receiver and wide receiver, and that combination is like 1.2% owned, you should destroy the field those weeks. And unfortunately, the rest didn't go right.
Yeah. So my initial take is, unless there's a one-off that kind of screams out at me that fits in, I'm not playing this game at all. And that's just my look at the projections, my look at everything is, the normal look. I can go over the guys you would play if you were going to play Buffalo, right? You play your John Browns and Devin Singletaries and Josh Allens and maybe some defense. And if you were going to play Denver, you would play Noah Fant, maybe a tight end, or maybe try Lindsey again, who you turned me on to a little bit last week or whatever it is. But for me, I wasn't playing anybody from this game at all.
I'm very high on Lindsey this week.
There it is.
I think the ownership is actually going to be a little bit there. I think he's taken the job entirely. They said it last week. We saw him respond. He had 18 touches. He didn't have a giant game. It was at Minnesota. That was a tough spot. And also they were up a lot, so they kind of knew they were going to be running. It wasn't like a great Phillip Lindsay, I can break free spot. So even the amount of carries that Freeman and Booker got, which I think that Freeman had 8. Yeah, Freeman had 8 carries. I don't even think that would have been as high if it was a game they weren't playing from 3 touchdowns ahead until the last quarter. So I think we're looking at Phillip Lindsay in a game where you expect him to be trailing, and I think you're looking at him in the passing game. So I really like him at 5.2 on DraftKings. Don't know where I'll end up on him. I love the Buffalo defense in general. I like using them this week. I'm fine with it. It's just spending up on defense. It's a whole different conversation. But other than the truth is Buffalo's defense is actually underpriced for what their upside is in this matchup against one of the Allens, and probably the worst one.
Well, I will say, by the way, that I didn't give a full slate overview, and we'll get to that later. But given the way running backs look on this slate, some of the one-offs I am going to be looking for are going to be running backs, because we'll get to those later. But
that's interesting.
For me, I didn't really see a lot of terrific running back plays.
So I love this because we're on opposite things, because I have some cheap receivers that I'm obsessed with, which allows me to pay up for everybody at running back.
And we'll figure out who you want to pay up for when we get there, I guess.
And the problem is I have some receivers that I love to pay up for as well. But I can take whoever I want running back wise, basically with the guys who I'm going to be rolling out there.
Anybody else in this game?
Well, Phillip Lindsay being one of them, by the way. And the other guy in this game who I have some exposure to. So Phillip Lindsay, just to I want to give it all away where I'm at. That's my whole thing, is transparency. I don't care. It's Thursday, Sunday, things are going to change, obviously. But this is where I'm at right now. I have 20 to 30% Phillip Lindsay in my script. And I have 10 to 15% Tim Patrick. This is a weird play. The secondary receiver is going to have a better shot in Buffalo all the time, because the cornerback's name escapes me. But you're going to have a lot of pressure on Sutton. I don't mind if anybody who plays Sutton just says, okay, I'm just going to play Sutton every week, because I think that there's like a Galladay type of feel to what's happened with him a little bit.
What does that mean, a Galladay type of feel?
Like Tate goes away, and then Galladay was sort of taking the job anyway. Sutton was sort of taking the job from Sanders. The other guy goes away. And then we see these explosion games, and even against good coverage, you still might see a quarterback who's inexperienced target him a bunch. I also think Noah Fant makes some sense. I just don't I actually do. I'm sorry. I have him at 10 to 15. And then I've got I always play John Brown at 5 to 10% if I don't like him. So if I like him, he's going to be much higher. If I don't, it's just an upside versus ownership. The guy just had the highest scoring week of anybody, and no one's going to play him. I understand the matchup's not good, but he has to make one play basically to pay off, because he's going to catch. He's the only receiver in the NFL with 75 yards or more in every game this year. His whole thing is that he's a deep threat home run possibility. He only had 1 touchdown going into last week. He had 2 last week. this is a guy who still is due touchdown regression, who could have been by now one of the 7.8, 7.9 receivers if things had gone one or two plays different throughout the season. So I really like John Brown just in general. I don't love this matchup. I just want to throw him out there as a guy who you just should be sprinkling in. And obviously Fant makes a lot of sense with Allen at quarterback, but again, probably better tight ends to get to as we get on.
Okay.
Let's get on to the next one. What's your next game here?
Well, the next one, I'm just going to go across the DraftKings.
Let's do it.
So the next one I have is I was about to say the Knicks against the Bulls, is Giants against Chicago. I hate to be like the wet blanket or anything like that, but this game also just doesn't seem to do it for me. Like on the Giants side, I really didn't have anybody that I was going to get to. I was going to say that I really wasn't going to play Barkley, but I'm looking at a 2% owned estimate, which just can't be right. But
here's the thing, and they may shut him down.
Okay.
Or virtually shut him down. You know what I mean? Like it's one of those things. He might get you even like let's say he breaks an 80-yard touchdown. I don't even think that guarantees that he stays the rest of the game. Like it's a weird situation for him, especially on the road in Chicago. But I do like the idea. I mean, like I have him in my lineups at 15 to 25%, but I don't see 2%. I see him probably being in that range.
Yeah, I wasn't going to use literally. I wasn't using anybody from the Giants.
Look at the price. The price on Barkley too, though, is hard to resist. The price versus workload, especially in a game where you're going to be struggling to move the ball. Don't you think he's just going to get a ton of work?
Yeah, I don't know. I just again, I can't play everybody. I'm just off it. On the Chicago side, the only thing again, I was just because I'm going to be starved for running back. I guess after breaking the hearts of millions of DFS players, whether it was the week before or both weeks, I have no problem going back to David Montgomery. Probably pair him with the Bears defense. Again, this is probably not going to be a very sneaky play. Okay, but I think that's one way to go. Or the other way to go again with another running back you could play. It's totally probably a little bit of a different game script you need. But Tariq Cohen, he's always got upside. He's going to be low owned also. But aside from that, I wasn't going to be playing Allen Robinson this week. I wasn't going to be playing guys like Taylor Gabriel and Anthony Miller. I'm just maybe I'm just a little quick to get off, and I'm just kind of off the Trubisky thing. I mean, I've tried a couple of times. He might have better luck against the Giants, but I think I just have better plays, even though they're going to be really, really low owned.
Yeah, I don't really love this game, but I do have some ownership on some guys, so I'm just going to throw it out there. Yeah. I was listening to a few things that some of the guys like Matthew Berry were talking about for the rest of the season, who are the guys you're going to look out for to potentially have those like game-changing weeks. And one of the guys he mentioned was just situationally and just how good he is and sort of underrated is Golden Tate. It's not a great matchup, obviously, just something to keep an eye on. So I think I want a tiny bit of exposure to an unowned Golden Tate who just might see a ton of the workload. I understand with Shepard being back that it could be him. I just think that Tate overall is a good receiver, and I don't know how healthy Shepard really is. So I sort of think that's like kind of interesting. I like Saquon. I will probably, like I said, 15 to 25% is where I'm at. I might go a little higher just because the ownership and they still could use him and the ability to break a slate is still there. So there's a couple really cheap, him and Zeke, and we'll get into that one later. But at their prices, it's just interesting to play them for their upside. And they're not going to be that, like we're used to them being crazy owned at 9.4. And I understand the matchup's tough, but like if the guy's going to play the full game and get his normal workload, you can sign me up at 7.9 to at least have some exposure. But overall, this is not a game you want to be high on. I do think Taylor Gabriel against this Giant secondary is really interesting. I think I'll be above like 10% on him because I like some other cheap receivers, but he is a guy who I tend to play almost every week, just probably double what the field is. I might be 4% some weeks, but it's just I like some exposure to a guy at that price who can break a slate.
Again, I will just reiterate that David Montgomery, he wasn't on the main slate last week. And the week before, remember that after Stafford got ruled out, this guy became so popular and just blew up the entire DFS community pretty much.
It's weird.
scored 6
he
points.
ran the ball like a ton, and you usually think with that the non-catching out of the backfield and the fact that Tariq Cohen is, in my opinion, just a really good player still, is a tricky one but again, Cohen, you want a different game script. So I think you look Montgomery, and then if you want to play a little tiny bit of Tate on the other side or Barkley, I don't mind that. I just think there's better spots on the slate.
Yeah, if we were the gambling types and I didn't have such a big disadvantage, I would make a side bet of Montgomery against Lindsey. That would be fun.
I think that is a kind of an interesting bet this weekend, actually. I could see that one going, oof. I actually think that's an interesting bet. I mean, I should have thought about it like that, I guess, before I mean, I like Montgomery, but I didn't have him as high as Lindsey, obviously. I think Lindsey has more upside, but yeah, it's interesting. I think Lindsey has more upside, and he's going to get more of the workload, so that's where I'm at.
All right, Pittsburgh, Cincinnati. I mean, okay. I didn't do this on purpose, right? I didn't put these.
Okay.
I didn't put these. I mean, I'm just going along with the DraftKings lineups, right? The DraftKings order. But I was looking at Pittsburgh and Cincinnati, and there's one guy. There was literally 2 guys from this whole game that I had any interest in. Okay, both of them from the Cincinnati side. One of them not even really. Like on the Cincinnati side, just because I was looking for a $3,000 tight end. I just put Tyler Eifert out there. But the other guy who I would play from this game, again, for those running backs, and again, maybe I thought the running backs were scarcer than you, is I would 100%, even though Pittsburgh's been playing better defense, I would go right back to Joe Mixon.
Yeah, I like that you're finally with me. It took the whole year for you to catch up with me on Mixon. But now you've come around. I mean, not that he's been blowing up, but just that, look, like he's literally had the nut low for what he could have had like the last 3 weeks, and he still ended up with 17, 20, and 17. I think I'm off of him this week personally, but I do have I'm not going to say I won't play him at all. I kind of have to stay on brand a little bit and like maybe squeeze in about 5 or 10%. But I do think that I'll be heavy on Tyler Boyd. Squeaky wheel narrative. He said I'm the best player on this team with AJ out. They said that I need to get me the ball. He said I need to get the ball.
Great.
All the things. All of what you want to hear. He's not going to be unowned. He's too cheap. I have him right now at 25 to 35%. I think that I might even end up higher.
Wow, that's big, huh?
I think that, you just talk about guys with upside. He's one of the cheap receivers. $5K for a guy who's put up 30 before and can do it. It's not a great matchup, but it's not like the worst in the world. I'm just going to take a shot. He might get 12 targets. I mean, yeah, it's not like the most exciting play. I mean, you're talking about a 5K receiver, and that's partly what I want to do different this week is play cheap receivers.
Again, I'll just reiterate that when
put up 25 or more twice this year.
Who was Cincinnati playing a couple weeks ago? Cincinnati was playing, I want to say Baltimore. Yeah, they were down 30 billion points. And the way they attempted to counteract that was giving the ball to Mixon 30 times. Okay?
I do hear you on this. I'm not going to go crazy. But it is a guy who I have in my – I have him – I said 25 – I have him at 20 to 35. But still,
that's definitely
in play. We also forgot Vance McDonald on the other side is definitely a strong play.
Yes, he was the other guy, by the way. The only guy in Pittsburgh. I mean, look, Jalen Samuels looked kind of okay as far as projections or whatever, a little bit. Wow, he's really low owned. But the only guy I was really looking for was McDonald.
Yeah, I have like that weird 5 to 15% programmed in for Samuel just because I can afford expensive running backs. But like his price makes him a little bit less appealing, although like it wouldn't shock me if he just blew up here. So I just think it's other spots, We're going to get to them too. There's some good guys coming up. We've talked about a lot of guys other than – I don't think I've had anybody over 20%, I said, other than Boyd. Who else are we getting to next? Let's see.
Okay, you ready?
This is going to be fun.
Okay, so – let's clear the board here.
You're just going to play everybody from this game?
Okay, so let's start with this, and this, okay? So I don't know what kind of ownership this is going to have. Let's do this just so that we don't forget, okay? So I think that this is one of the games that, again, I'm going to highlight, that I'm going to want a lot of. I don't know what the ownership is going to work out being. Right now, if I look at it, I just look at the wide receivers, to want to know the truth, to start off with. I mean, I'm looking at, Beckham.
Oh, you're just going hammer stack.
Well, no. I'm not going to use them all. I wanted to put Chubb in.
Where's Gesicki? Get Gesicki in there.
No, absolutely, right. So we got to put him in too. And before I also forget, because I want to use. All right, so let's talk about this, right? So you have Beckham is going to be 17%. Now, with any luck, is that Xavier Howard guy back?
I don't believe. I honestly doesn't. I don't think that it really matters.
Well, it mattered because if he was back, then Beckham would be less owned.
Okay, so Beckham's gonna let's just play this realistically the way it's gonna work.
Right. Okay,
Beckham is gonna be massive chalk, and I'm okay with it.
Right. So I presume it's gonna be massive chalk. I don't know what massive means. If Beckham's 15% and
it's 30% or higher for. I cannot see it not happening.
All right. Well, then we could find different styles. This is one of the games that I'm interested in. There's one little bit of narrative I will throw in for those worried about blowout risk or anything like that. And this is something I do believe in a little bit, is I do think there's going to be referee revenge, and that Cleveland's going to get no breaks in this game after the fight in Pittsburgh. So I do think that that's a little bit going against them. So I think that offsets some of the game script risk. But I think that Cleveland is coming around and had some kind of tricky matchups, and I think this is a very logical game to play. Kalen Ballage is, I guess he stinks, but you know what? If you're going to play this game, you got to have points come from somewhere, and he's 4,400. What do you think about this game?
I love it, especially the Cleveland side of it. I also think Allen Hurns is a viable receiver option, like a really viable receiver option, potentially higher than Devontae Parker. I don't love Parker's matchup at all with Hayden, so I'm much more on the Hurns side as of right now, which really lets you do some. He's one of my other cheap guys. Like, look, I'm not going crazy with Hurns. I had him injured last week, but I've got him at 15 to 20%. That's some ownership. You know what I mean? And it's mostly because I want a little something to run it back, along with Ballage, who I also think I have at 15 to 25%. So I'm getting a little bit above the field there. And then with Parker, I think I have him at actually around the same, but I might end up being a little bit, 10 to 20 for Parker, a little bit less on him. Much more interested in the Beckham side. Right now, he's my highest owned projected player. I have him at 45%. Potentially going to be higher than that. I think that they're going to smash. I don't think that – I totally disagree with the narrative, even though I love narrative. I just don't think that – I think it's more like the sympathy has shifted, and that's what happened with – you saw the interview.
Could be.
So I think that it's sort of gone the other way. And the truth is that one of the most well-liked guys in football is Myles Garrett. He's never had a problem in his life. And I just think that, let's not villainize the guy, even though I said he could end up in prison after it happened. At the same time, speaking of just this game, you want Mayfield. I'm not like, you got the revenge narrative with Landry. It's not in Miami. I don't feel as strong about it. I'm more into the Beckham, Chubb, Mayfield. It doesn't have to be together, could be together. I'm okay with that, just them blitzing. And I still think in that case, Hurns, Gesicki, one of those guys goes crazy. I don't even mind if you want to stack some of the – I would like some of the Miami guys, even with the Cleveland stack, even with the Cleveland defense. I like that idea. Like, I want the receivers with it because they're going to throw the ball a million times. And this is not like a guy who can't chuck it. So I would want a Parker or a Hurns or a Gesicki to run it back, potentially even two, and I still don't mind the defense. And then you can do whatever you want elsewhere. So as a game stack, it's super interesting. A lot of things you can go here. Just to read some percentages, because I don't want to just be the person who says,
sure,
hey, these are good plays. One of my biggest issues with certain companies that I've worked for, that everybody else in the industry does, is that they just say who's a good play, and they don't talk about specifically if they're playing them, how they're playing them, all that stuff. I'm sorry, I'm just trying to grab my –
and the good thing is, Bobby, that you don't have to worry about the transparency issue because, as I talked about in another video, I mean, just because you tell people who you're playing, it doesn't mean that you're giving away your edge per se, because you know what? As I talked about before, we could talk about the same players, like the same players, and I promise you that you're going to do better than I am because you're just better at lineup construction than I am. And that's so much of this game is not just knowing who the plays are, but knowing exactly how to put them together and mixing ownership. So it's not the biggest deal in the world to, I don't know why people have such issues with it, because even if you say who good plays are, doesn't mean that that's the end of the story anyway.
Yeah, and we'll get into this in a different video, but we both have poker background, and that is something that, we've talked about. And like, obviously, I've worked on every side of it. I've worked on the coaching, done videos, I've done every part of it. And I've also been a player, but I always was baffled at these people who thought you were giving away too much by doing that. Right. And the people who complained about the whole card camera years ago, like, it just is nuts. Just adjust with the way the world is. Anyway, this game, I think we've extensively covered, but basically I love Cleveland. I think we're on it. And I when I say guys like, I didn't say the ownership percentages. I have 45% Beckham right now. I have 25 to 35% Chubb. I'm a little bit interested also in Kareem Hunt. I have him at 10 to 20%. I think he's like a sneaky play that actually it could go his way here. It's weird with him and Chubb. I hate playing Chubb at 8.1 with that Hunt there, especially at high ownership. But it also makes me just want to pivot to Hunt a little bit. Anyway, Alan Hearns, I want about 15 to 20% of him. Jarvis, I want about 15 to 20% of. His price is a little higher than I like, but I just think he can end up with a boatload of targets here. And I think that Kalen Ballage, I have at 15 to 20% also. So again, this is one of the places that I'm getting value from the other side, but it's mostly going to be, I don't think I'll have any of these individual Miami players unless there's at least one, probably two Cleveland on the other side.
Okay. All right. So keeping in mind, like you said, that you could be different in other places. Moving on to the next game, clear the board. Tampa against Atlanta, total of like 100 or whatever it is. So obviously this is a game where a lot of people are good plays, and you have to figure out whether the ownership is worth it. But let's just start from the Atlanta side, I suppose. Hopefully Matt Ryan's questionable tag will kind of hold. And then there's Julio. And then there's, let's put all the guys in that we can talk about.
That's everyone.
We couldn't. Well, hold on. Let's put in. Where's your guy? Where'd he go?
Russell Gage.
Yeah. Throw him in, and then, boy, oh boy, Tampa. Who is there a wide receiver on Tampa? I've heard of. Well, there's going to be him, and then there's going to be. Okay, we ran out of players.
You can play Cameron Braid also.
Yeah. Okay. So
Braid had 14 targets.
So Braid and OJ Howard and all this stuff. Okay. Not to mention on the Atlanta side, the running back position, it'll be Brian Hill revenge against the entire DFS community, maybe, right? Who he took all the money from last week.
There, we just did it. We just won the million. We're done.
Pretty much. Okay.
We're done.
Now is when you'd have to kind of look into who would be low owned that you could play, or how you kind of attack this. Now, again, looking at the ownership as far as I'm looking at right now, Julio is 20. Again, I can't know if this is right, but Julio is 24%. Ridley about 10. Gage is about 10. I don't know if that means you get rid of Julio or not, but he's certainly in play. Ridley is in play. Gage is in play. And on the Tampa side, both these guys are Evans and Godwin are both at 10, 15%. And I certainly would have no problem with playing lineups that look like this, for example, right? Even just Ridley and Gage with Godwin coming back, or any of those combinations, as long as, again, you realize what this lineup is going to look like when it comes to filling in the rest. Like if you play Ridley, Gage, and Godwin, and you don't lose Julio, then you could go for more chalky other plays, right? But where if you use Julio and Godwin or Evans, then you might have to differentiate elsewhere. So, I mean, what do you think? I mean, it's nothing I said is particularly off the board, but what are your thoughts?
No, I want to point out that Atlanta's defense has looked legitimately good in tough spots recently. Having said that, it's very hard not to be very overweight on this game entirely, especially on the Atlanta side of the attack. But I will just mention, you're going to get Evans and Godwin at lower ownership than you ever get them. This is a spot you'd think like 20+% for those guys. I don't think so. I think you're talking about teens, and I think that's a big difference. Like, I really do. So I really like each of those guys. I love Russell Gage. He's one of my favorite plays on the slate. For, I don't know, I guess for value, I guess. I have him at 25 to 35%. So, again, it's still early. I'm not going to finish it off with that, but I think he's been in 30% of my lineups. He was there last week. He's probably going to be right around there again. I'm going to be above the field, probably around 20% on Calvin Ridley. I understand that his price went up, but I believe in his talent, and I believe playing this Atlanta pass offense against a pass funnel defense. And then I'm going to be overweight on Julio. I don't care if he's the chalkiest receiver, which I still think is going to be he and Beckham are going to be close. I'm going to be probably trying to be close to double the field on Julio. Might be my highest owned player along with Beckham, except for that I love these other cheap receivers, so I have a bunch of lineup builds without either of them or with just one of them.
If you are playing Tampa, let me ask you a question. I mean, hypothetically, I guess, can you get, considering how it's gone the last 6 weeks, can you get ceilings out of both these guys at the same time, or probably not?
I think you can. Well, I mean, think about it. This matchup was 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago. If it was 2 weeks ago, actually, Tampa would have had this would have probably been like a 60-something total. Tampa probably would have been favored.
Yep.
It's a really good spot to attack that situation. Just hope Atlanta can regress. And the thing is, I think that I like the Atlanta defense, even as this weird game stacking defense thing is confused a lot of people. Me and Grant had a lot of success with it, and I've won tournaments doing it. If you find the right type of game environments that like pick sixes are in the cards, like if you're going to play a Jameis lineup, I don't even mind playing a Jameis stacked lineup with the Atlanta defense against it. A pick six is like, I think Jameis is going to throw at least one pick, probably two, maybe three, maybe four. It's all in the cards. He's still going to throw for 300 yards and three touchdowns, in my opinion. I'm going to play him. I'm going to play the defense. I'm going to play Ryan. I'm not going to play the Tampa defense. I'm going to play the Atlanta defense and Ryan too. I really like this game. Obviously, a lot of people are going to. I think I'm going to be just make sure that I'm probably double the field on everyone who's in play in this game. I don't really think I'm going to be looking at too much of the running backs, except for I will have tiny bit of exposure to Ronald Jones.
How brutal of a beat would it be is if Brian Hill coming off a chalk week won something for someone against the quote unquote pass funnel defense?
It is a pass funnel defense, and the worst thing about it is that he's gonna if he was gonna be unowned this week because of it. If we were talking about
he's gonna be owned anyway.
Yeah, like that, I'd be all over it. But right now, I've already given you a couple. Like we've talked about, a guy at 3,300. We talked about a guy at 5,200, a guy at 5K, a guy at 3,900. Those are some cheap receivers that'll allow you to pay up for running backs who are not going to be as chalky, which we'll get into later. And this is one of the two. This is one of the two biggest games for me to stack, and it's number one for me on the Atlanta side.
Sounds good. All right. Moving on. Again, I don't know why DraftKings put it like this, but there's only a couple of more really good games coming up, and let's start with this one, which is always really confusing to me. The New Orleans games are always really confusing to me because I never really know whether you're dealing with Coors Field Saints or ground and pound Saints. You know what I mean? Over the last couple of years, you've had a little bit of both. In this game, just so you know where I'm at, my favorite, and I guess everybody's favorite running back play of the week is going to be Kamara. He's slowly been brought back from his injury. He had very little usage a couple of weeks ago, and he got more last week. And this is he's at home, and I think that it's full go with Kamara, and I think that he's obviously going to be a very, very strong play. He's going to be high owned, but maybe don't play him in tournaments with some of the higher owned stacks or something like that. But it's kind of hard to get away from him. And the other the rest of the Saints, I mean, obviously Michael Thomas is projecting as a really, really good play, as he always does. He's going to be 20% owned also. I was not going to get to any of the other stuff. You can talk to me if you like the Ted Gins and the Traquan Smiths at low ownership. But as far as New Orleans goes, I wasn't going to go to the Drew Brees part of it. I was just going to go either either Thomas is a one-off or what's his name, or Kamara is a one-off. But I don't think Thomas is going to make it into my one-offs just because of the stacks that I like. On the Carolina side, and when you interrupt me or whatever, we can do whatever. Carolina side, every week it's a decision of whether you play Christian McCaffrey or not. I mean, he's just – when he gets no touchdowns, he gets 30 points. I just don't even get it, you know. I mean, against the Saints have a better defense maybe than some other teams, but, you know, the old defense doesn't matter debate. I mean, I just McCaffrey just freaking gets there every freaking week. So for me to say completely fade McCaffrey is probably irresponsible. But with that said, he is not projecting as good of a value as Kamara, if that helps you at all. And the other guys from Carolina I would play if I were playing this game, which I probably might, is I would go right back maybe to DJ Moore as a good value. I don't know. They're showing him at 6% ownership or 5%, whatever. If that's even remotely close, I'm gonna try that, and I would try Samuel again also.
Yeah, I'm very interested in DJ Moore, especially. I think that you could see a huge target share. I just don't know. I mean, it's hard because my favorite defense of the week is the Saints defense. So but the weird part is that I also have a ton of McCaffrey. This is a weird defense week for me. I'm betting on some turnovers and some gambling spots, but I really like to be ahead of the field on McCaffrey when he's under-owned, and he should have a ton of work. And I mentioned some cheap receivers, so I can play him and Kamara together, which I don't think, as much as they are going to be popular, that they're going to be popular together, especially with the cheap receivers that I'm throwing out there. And you can, you know, I can still get in a lineup with a Mike Evans or a Godwin and a Russell Gage and another cheap receiver and cheap tight end, and boom, I'm in business with my two favorite running backs on this slate. So I really like that as one way to build. I don't want to fully stack this game, but I do want exposure to both sides of it, so it's kind of weird. But like a 1v1 or a 2v1 without including quarterbacks, that's probably the way that I would go.
Just kind of testing this theory real quick.
Yeah, you can do it. Hearns or Gesicki.
No, that's not going to work. Hold on.
Yeah, you got to put Odell in, and then we're going to go cheap on defense. Put Odell in for Landry. We're going to go minimum cost of defense.
Yeah.
Which is another one of my top defenses, sadly. So you're actually stacking against yourself here.
I know.
I don't think it's the worst thing in the world, by the way, especially with a guy like Baker, but whatever. Just play the Bengals where you
I'll leave
yeah.
I'll leave this one to you, I think.
I have a 20 you have two tight ends. I guess it was really I guess it's Baker. I have one quarterback that I'm using that's below Baker's price.
All right, we'll get there.
It's not like a fun one, but it's just for that specific
Okay. All right. So next, so again, this is obviously going to be a summary. This is obviously the game that you're going to get a lot of guys from. You know, I wouldn't fade the game. I wouldn't fade, you know, the top plays. You know, just I would have some percentage of all of them. I mean, if you can. Detroit, Washington is the next game on my list. Now for me, at least, we're getting back into boredom. I was not going to play anybody from this game at all. The first guy I put in my shadow lineup, just because the guy you put me on last week, I got rid of him because what's his name's back is Geis. But aside from that, I'm not even that. I literally wasn't going to play anybody from this game. So when I'm not going to play anybody from the game, the first thing I think about is whether I want to play a defense. So I guess Washington defense might be something to play, or Detroit defense. But aside from that, I really didn't have much interest in this game. What do you think?
Yeah, I like the Detroit defense. I'm sort of surprised the spread is as low as it is, but I actually don't mind just taking a shot on Galladay or McLaurin. Certainly nothing to write home about. Definitely ready to move on.
Okay. Okay. Next game, which I'm into. I think this game can completely blow up. Is Oakland the Jets, and question of which way you kind of want to do it, whether you want to do it from the Raiders side or from the Jets side. For whatever reason, I'm kind of more interested in doing it from the Jets side than the Raiders side, even though I know that Oakland's a little bit of a favorite or whatever. I just, for whatever reason, have this feeling that that Darnold is more capable of a big ceiling than Carr is. Maybe that's just my hallucination. But the good thing about it is that you could play guys that are, I don't want to say easy to play, but for me, there's Crowder, there's Anderson, there's Thomas. You know, you could play either of these guys. I would probably play two of them and run it back with the normal Oakland guys, either paying up for Waller or paying down, or not paying down, or playing Tyrell Williams, or a little less owned. What's his name? Where'd he go? Hunter Renfrow. And I think this is definitely a game that can blow up. And I don't know what kind of ownership is going to come from this game. I would imagine it'd be less than some of the other games that we discussed. So if these ownerships I'm looking at are similar to what's actually going to happen, I think that this, to me, would be my low-owned, just kind of load-up spot.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think I'm interested in Crowder, actually, even at his price. I think he's got a big ceiling. I also have some interest in Demaryius Thomas, which I don't feel great about. And I'm okay with the Oakland guys, but I don't think I'm stacking this game. I get the Darnold argument and everything. I think that if I'm playing this game, it's definitely not going to include either quarterback. Maybe I'll throw a Darnold one in by the end of the week, but for me, it's not really where I'm focused. My ownership is going to be heavier on the just the wide receiver running back combinations. Le'Veon Bell, I'm very high on. I'm high on Darren Waller. I'm high on Tyrell Williams, but I'm not like crazy high on any of them. Probably going to be around the field with them.
Okay. Well, I mean, again, for me, I mean, this is going to be, again, they project pretty well. Neither team seems particularly interested in playing any defense recently. And, with all the ownership going to the other games, I definitely see this.
I think Le'Veon's going to be really highly owned.
Who?
Le'Veon.
Oh, I don't care about him. I forget the running back. I'm just talking about the receivers.
Okay, well, Le'Veon's going to be involved in that too, but okay.
Yeah. What was the thing that Belt tweeted yesterday? Something like he's done taking drug tests or something. But yeah, he was called upon to take a drug test, and he said, "I've taken too many of these already. You never find anything. I'm just kind of over it," or something like that. You got to find that. It's pretty.
That is pretty funny.
So you don't have any interest. You don't have that's funny. You don't have as much interest in this game as I do.
No, I'm much more interested in the next game we're going to talk about.
Awesome. Okay, so let's move on then to Seattle, Philly. Another group that I don't get right ever. So you'll be able to turn me on to the right thing. So the first thing I would say about the Seattle Philly game is the highest projected value, as far as I'm looking at. Aside from Kamara or whatever, but the highest projected value from a mid-range especially is coming from this game, and that's going to be Miles Sanders. He was chalky last week, and I guess he didn't do so well, but he's still projecting really, really well. And I know the Eagles are probably known as a better, we call it pass funnel, whatever. They're pretty good against the run, but nevertheless, Sanders is projecting to be a very, very, very good value play, and he's going to be somewhat chalky. So he's one guy. The other thing you could do on the Eagles side, if you wanted to stack this game, the normal guys, right? Meaning, it's so funny, the normal guys. The normal guys for me, for Philadelphia, are going to be Ertz, Aguilar, and Dallas Goedert, who might be looked at as like kind of a third wide receiver. I don't know if Jordan Matthews is playing. I don't know if he's active or if he's going to get run. But I guess we'll look for coach speak on that. But those are the guys that I would play on Philadelphia. And on the Seattle side, again, same type of thing. Like, I've never gotten Chris Carson right. Guys that really don't catch the ball too much don't really –
I'm not playing Carson in this matchup.
You are?
I'm not.
Oh, okay. And then, you could always go play Russell Wilson, especially if you think, Philadelphia gives up stuff to the pass. I mean, just, rock the house. Play Wilson, play play Lockett, play Metcalf, bring it back. Look, this is easy game, right? So that's why football's so frustrating, man. It looks so easy when you're making these lineups. It's the opposite of baseball. Baseball, whenever I enter my lineups and the first pitch happens, I think I have no chance to win. Every time in football, whenever I put a lineup in, I'm like, this has no chance to lose. And then next thing you know, something happens.
Yep, I totally am with you there. I'm just going to start off with my favorite plays from this game. I like Carson Wentz.
Good.
I think this is a decent week for him. I'm going to have some exposure to he and Wilson. I like Wilson too. Not a guy I usually play because of limited volume, but like this is again, a pass funnel defense. Well, they're just really good run defense. They're going to have to pass the ball a little bit, especially being in Philadelphia. So I am extremely interested in Josh Gordon. I think I will have 30% of him as of right now. He's 4,200. I think the price, he's one of my cheap receivers also. You get exposure to that Philly pass defense, and they like ran some specific plays for Gordon. And I'm just going to always bet on this guy's upside because if he sneaks in one, he can still break a play. He's a big guy, hard to tackle in the open field. So I really like Josh Gordon, and I think he's going to get there on targets alone. I really believe that. I also don't mind mixing.
Who's going to suffer, by the way? Who's going to suffer with these three guys?
I don't. In this particular matchup, probably none of them. But Lockett is a little bit banged up, which is also a better excuse, like to go to more to Metcalf or Gordon here. I also don't mind Jacob Hollister, but I think he takes a little bit of a bump down with Gordon being around. And then I like Miles Sanders on the other side, but I really like Zach Ertz. I think Zach Ertz is the top play at tight end, and that's just like I'm going to end up building a little core out of that. It's going to be Zach Ertz, Josh Gordon, Sanders, not all together, but like Metcalf or Carson or Goddard in a lot of my lineups. I think probably one of those guys, let's say, ends up in pretty much all of my lineups.
You can't do something like this. Your style is not to.
I think it's over. I think playing Russell Wilson with more than one receiver is always a mistake, in my opinion, with the exception of like a really rare week. Because with a receiver and and this week maybe you could because Gordon's cheap enough to be that secondary receiver. Usually it's a price thing versus, you know what I mean? Like it's a price thing, but also you're using Ertz tight end, so you're paying up already. Kind of like that, actually. Usually I would say I wouldn't mind a tight end and a receiver with him, but this week actually it's the opposite. I actually don't mind it as much. That's not a bad way to go at all. This game could easily shoot out Philly. We've seen them do it over and over again. I really like that. You're left with plenty of room to do some other things. You could still play the two guys from the Atlanta Tampa game on the other side. There's a lot of ways to go with it. I really like that build.
The other thing you mentioned about Russell Wilson is where you can struggle with taking him with two receivers necessarily is because he has that rushing upside himself. You know, so if he runs one in, yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's pretty much it. I love this game. I think we should get over to the last couple and get Let's
do it.
Let's get to it and then get on out of here.
Jacksonville, Tennessee. Let's see how many. Well, I was gonna say let's see how many seconds this takes me, but well, you got basically identical twins on the opposite sides of the ball, right? You have Leonard Fournette and what's his name and Derrick Henry. They're both around the same price. They both project about the same. They both have similar kind of like middle of the road ownership, about 10%. Neither of them have the, whatchamacallit, the reputation of getting the ball out of the backfield. They're both playing against teams that, whether it's true or not, have a reputation for having good defenses. And, I see roads where both of these guys end up with 12 fantasy points. I see roads where one of them ends up with 40. But I wasn't going to go to these guys. The only guy I was going to go to, actually, I shouldn't say that. I was looking for any running backs. So I'll play anybody, really. And the only guy I was really going to play was going to be was just Jonnu Smith, just because I needed somebody at time.
Yeah, I'm a little different than you. I really like both running backs in this game. I think that they're both strong plays that are going to be under-owned. I think Henry will have more ownership, whereas I think Fournette, like this, there's massive upside here. I also like D.D. Westbrook with Foles back at quarterback, and I'm not even opposed to like running a Henry Foles Westbrook lineup out there, which is pretty cheap. But Westbrook is one of the other cheap receivers that I think is way, way, way in play this week that people might overlook. Might get a little bit of exposure to Corey Davis, but probably not going to go crazy there. It's going to be mostly Henry and Fournette, and not even a crazy amount.
All right, sounds good.
Let's move on. Let's get over to the final, the Dallas at New England.
All right, so Dallas at New England. Now, again, this is it's funny these teams and their reputations, or what's become of some of these teams. You know, if you asked me at the beginning of the year, right, what are these teams all about? Like Dallas was known as the team that was the worst coached, slowest team in the world, right? That just ran. And next thing you know, you have what's his name, Dak Prescott throwing 400 yards a game, right? And New England has been very, very tricky all year because they played these teams that were just atrocious, and you know the defense was really, really good, and then they got just destroyed by Baltimore and led people to believe I don't know what's going on with these guys. So this game I think could be again another game could be low owned that could show up as something, you know, like and if you believe this whole thing that Belichick is going to be the one to take the best option away or whatever. If in fact he does something like try to stack the box against Zeke, I'm more than willing to buy into the recent Prescott hype and play some Prescott with Cooper, Prescott with whatever else, Gallup, Prescott, and bring it back with Edelman, bring it back with Dorsett, bring it back with even, who knows, James White. You know, so I think this could be, you call it late night hammer, whatever it is. There are only 2 4:00 games, and one of them could be this. I see a little cloud there with rain that might draw some people away from this game. I definitely see variations where this game, where you go, like they say, you go into the 4:00 games with a big score. Don't count your money yet, because I definitely see roads where this thing kind of blows up also.
It's interesting. Like, I'm not going to take the Dak angle and go that far, but I do have some interest in sprinkling in some unowned Gallup and Cooper, who are probably too cheap, especially if they, like you said, try and stack the box. However, I'm also going to be ahead of the field on Zeke. He's 7.5K. I can afford to spend
on who?
That's
on Zeke?
On Zeke, yeah. I just got to be ahead of the field here. I think the touchdown equity upside is high enough, and I can just play him and run it back with Edelman. Those are the only 2 guys I'm well ahead of the field on in this game. It might come off of Zeke a little as it goes on, but for right now, I'm still pretty high on him. I think Dorsett has enough upside to where you play him, and you know you can mess with Sanu and all that. But I think that mostly it's Edelman and Zeke for me, with some Cooper and Gallup.
Well, I mean, you see though that the way I kind of like to play is, again, like I don't really script. What I do is I take my games and I set these stacks up, and then I just kind of try to fill in the one-offs along the way, and again, I have to make sure not to play too many games like this, because it just reduces my ability to get there, right? So you know, again, so like as to summarize, you know, you have some really, really good one-offs and some really, really good kind of like 1v1s in games and stuff like that. And you know, for me, again, I'm looking at, I have a couple of kind of off the boardish type games I'm looking at. I'm looking at the Dallas, New England. I'm looking at the Oakland Jets as my 2 kind of like off the boards. And then the Miami and Atlanta game are going to be my 2 kind of chalky things or whatever it is. And as long as for my own approach, as long as I don't go too crazy, like I see myself doing this all the time. Like, well, maybe I'll just throw in, you know what? Bobby liked Tyler Boyd. Maybe I'll just throw in a couple of, tells this guy's name, Finley, Boyd, and Tate. Run it back with Schuster, you know what I mean? And or Samuel. And then, you know, just throw a couple of lineups. But every one of those lineups that I put in that's basically just pitching money away could be lineups that I take cores that I actually like and just spread out among my one-offs or something like that. So I gotta remember to avoid being too spread out.
Yeah, I totally am with you there. All right, guys. Hey, this was really good for a first NFL video, I think. Let us know your thoughts. Please give us the like and subscribe on YouTube. We're going to keep making these videos for you guys. I'm going to stop this one really shortly so we can get this one loaded up for you for the weekend. And yeah, Sheets, thanks so much, man. Any thoughts before we get out of here?
No, ready to roll. Let's go golf.
Let's go get them, guys. All right, we'll take it easy. I'll talk to you guys shortly.
Okay.